Good afternoon, everyone. This is Maria Zack with Nations in Action, and I am so thrilled today to have with me General Thomas Mcnerney and General Paul Vallely, and our special source that many of you have been introduced to this week, Monsieur Philippe Argillier from Nice, France, joining us today. So we are very excited to bring this panel to the world because this is one of the most important discussions we will ever have. And unfortunately, it's a discussion that we didn't think we'd ever need to have. And we are really quite surprised to find ourselves in a situation where the world is at war. And I would like to have this forum and panel discussion to help the world understand exactly what the state of the world is. Many presidents step up to do a State of the Union address. And today I look at these three gentlemen as the pivotal folks in the battle that we now face globally. And this is our opportunity to provide to the world this very discussion that needs to take place so everybody knows the status of what is happening and how our allies of America can join together to help us rebuild not just America, but the world. So with that, I would love to open it up with a discussion about the shadow government. And with our special guest with us, Philippe, would you mind starting us off with what is the shadow government?
I guess this is the question. What is the shadow government? I'm gonna give a short answer as to the shadow government is the actual government that gives official orders to the elected government. I understand this could be hard to believe for some individuals, but the way it works, at least what I was able to witness for the past 20 years, is an extremely powerful entity behind the scene, and quite an entity. It does involve very influential individuals at the highest rank possible in finance as well as in politics. There are some heads of state behind the scene, indeed, and altogether 38 individuals run the daily lives of 8 billion people on Earth. And witnessing this triggered my decision to create my first databank on November 8, 2021. And I'm here today not, and I insist, not to create any conflict whatsoever with the 38 individuals behind the scene. They are part of the shadow government. On the other hand, I am making a big opening. I'm calling upon their consciousness to go towards another direction, a direction that will go for the people of the world, that will bring most justice and humanity. And I insist on this. Now, they have two options. Obviously, the databanks that I own are very sensitive. They own very sensitive information about these individuals on a professional level and on a personal level. And again, my ultimate goal would be to make a big opening, and I'm inviting all of them, if not some of them, to join us in this awakening of justice. And if they don't want to participate, they have another option left, is to just, I would say, get out of the way. And I mean what I say, and most important, not to interfere with the good work that we're all doing this afternoon. So Maria, the shadow government is the entity that is behind most, if not all, elected government, that tell them what to do and what not to do based upon geopolitical agreements most of them anchored in military abroad interventions. That's what the shadow government is.
Thank you. I'd love to open it up, generals, for you to dialogue with Philippe on this and ask questions that you have about both the shadow government and the databanks.
Yes, Maria, can I start this off with the question to
Please,
Philippe?
sir. Yes, sir.
I think that Philippe, I assume when you say this 38, they influence these governments through money in different forms, that they would be able to influence the government. Is that, how do they influence?
Well, they do have an agenda, and usually it's almost like a corporation. You have a short, mid, and long-term agenda, and yes, it is most all the time based upon economical reasons, but it is still more sophisticated than this. Usually, it's very much directed to geopolitical agreements, along with some of the very, if not the most powerful countries. USA, China, France are among the most powerful countries behind the scene with those shadow governments. And they come up with, as I said, with a short, mid, and long-term agenda. And according to this, they tailor-make what the agenda will be for the elected governments. And basically, it's almost, and that's why we call it the shadow government, because indeed, they are, I mean, it is the actual entity that decides what the next step will be, and yes, based upon economical reasons. And that will involve also military interventions if needed. And if, you know, I have two generals right here with me today, and unfortunately, I must say that 100%, I'm not saying 99%, 100% of the troops sent abroad are there to keep up the agenda of some countries based upon their economics. And I have never seen troops going and doing the work of the United Nations if needed, or it is also most of the time based upon fighting terrorism. And I can tell you, generals, that the country where the US sent their troops, the terrorism is not there to be found, and far from it. But again, it is a very good excuse. It's what will officialize the fact that we're sending troops, because taxpayers are obviously paying for this, and that legitimize our sending troops. And that goes for France, saying, you know what, we're doing this for your protection. But in reality, they are doing this for their protection, particularly the one fighting for the goods for the shadow governments.
Well, let me follow up with that, because General Vallely and I were intimately involved in mainstream media, Fox News, with the global war on terror. That's what brought us back together. And you are implying to me then with that statement that there was the shadow government behind the 9/11 attack on the United States. Am I correct in assuming that?
I am not making such a statement, General. You could assume this, it is your right. What I'm saying is that when I created my first databank on November 8, 2021, I just happened to sign my first contract with a small African country. And actually, the signature of this contract was on May 30th, 2001. And then, yes, September 11th hit. And within few hours of this tragic event, I can say that I did receive a phone call from the country I had signed the contract with. And the meeting took place a few days after this call. And I was asked to locate some region in the country that I had signed the contract with to host US troops. And to me, it appeared to be very odd. September 11 just happened. So what I did, actually, this is what triggered my decision to create my first databank. So I will not make the statement that the shadow government was behind September 11. On the other hand, I can say that all the elements bring us to think that they could be behind the shadow government. That's the way I would put it.
Okay. General Vallely, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to be on this conference call. General Mcnerney and I, several years ago, back as far as 2005, put together the Stand Up America U.S. Foundation. And we primarily now do a threat assessment, domestic foreign threats against America and other entities. And we've been using for quite a while a term globalist. And who are these globalists? Well, we've had names like Soros and Bill Gates and Buffett and a few others. But when you track and you look at the chessboard and you try to put that puzzle together, you see the meetings of these people who I would say, when we know the names of the 38, these are the same people that meet in Switzerland at these economic forums. These are the same people that meet in Aspen once a year at the Aspen Institute. These are the same people that gather in Sun Valley, Idaho, mostly a lot of the high-tech individuals. So when you start piecing it together, I think you're absolutely right on that they've been operating, they've been functioning. And if I'm correct, Philippe, they were responsible for Schengen, for tearing down the borders in Europe of the countries and allow all of these immigrants and others just to pass through without any border restrictions. I could be wrong, but I think Schengen was one of the first of many initiatives that these globalists had taken on. And I guess their goal is to, they want to see nationalism go away. The one state governments, that's why they persecute anybody that talks about nationalism so much. And they want to really create this one world where they control it. Question comes up, Philippe, why haven't we done anything about the billion-dollar cartels that are destroying America, that are tied to the Chinese and tied to other globalists? Up in Canada, for example, what's happening? So when you start looking at the chessboard, putting these pieces together, Philippe, it makes sense that there is some kind of overseeing architecture, structure of individuals in finance and government, and even senior military that are involved in what's happening around the world, and particularly now with the dismantling of America.
Yes, indeed. And, if I may, and to give you, I know most of them. And let me tell you more on a personal level and why they decided to move forward with their own world. To begin with, when you're a billionaire, you are a different individual. And why? Because everything that most of the people are used to deal with on a daily basis, they do not. So, and in order to understand why they did and what they're doing, what they do, is because they got bored. It was not enough to just be part of the world when you are above all of them. Those 38, we we're talking about trillions of dollars, not even billions. So when you are at that level, what's next? What do you do? Are you going to go do some shopping? Are you going to go meet some more presidents? Are you going to buy more homes, more jets, more yachts? No, you're going to have to come up with something else. And this is where they went in the wrong direction. They decided to create a world where they would be the gods. And that's it, as simple as this. And that's the reality, because to understand the shadow government, first, we must understand the individuals behind the shadow government. And these individuals have lost all sense of consciousness of anything, any values. And that's why, so when you are at the top of the very top, what they believe they are, let's create our own world. Let's decide on behalf of 8 billion people on Earth. It's almost like playing the game of Monopoly, where you decide what the big next step will be. And so far, it worked, because with that type of wealth, you can buy anything you want. And I can tell you, I was asked 3 times during the course of my being a consultant in Africa, if some individuals could literally buy a country. And yes, they could. Yes. There were a minimum of between 4 and 8 billion euros. And then we pick up some countries where the presidents are here to be bought. And unfortunately, and that's why I'm very offended on a human level, how the continent of Africa is being abused, and I would say raped, because they are taking advantage of official countries where their people die on a daily basis, not because of some being murdered. It's because simply they don't even have food or water to drink. So it is so easy to get there and say, listen, I'm going to buy you out, and I'm going to use your country. All the official criteria behind the country could be national banks, could be diplomatic force. And then you come. So, you know, when you have 20, 30, 40 billion American dollars or euros, what the hell, 8, 9 billion to buy a country? It's easy. So imagine that this group of people have bought out some key countries there and decided to set up their headquarters in order to manage the future of the world. And that's why we were able to move along with them, not as partners, but getting basically all their track record on our databanks for the past 20 years. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sure you must have gone through a lot of hell being a general, because you must have seen a lot of horror. But I can tell you that my life has been living in hell for many years, 24/7, because I do carry a consciousness. And what I'm doing, I'm first doing it because of the legacy I have to give first to my children and then to the world. And I'm taking a lot of risk doing this, but it is my mission. It is a moral obligation. So yes, few people on earth have set themselves in a location where they actually purchased the country. And from that perspective, they were able, and they are able, to conduct the activities of the daily life of the world, and particularly directly linked to extremely powerful governments, including the US. And I can tell you today that the Biden administration is under the control of the shadow government. I can confirm this without any hesitation based upon the information that I have.
Wow, Philippe, that is very powerful. And I'm so grateful to you also for validating our research into Leonardo and the use of the satellites at Leonardo in the theft of the United States election. And that validation not just meant a lot to us at Nations in Action, but it gave you validity with us because you had pieces that we did not have. And this explanation of the shadow government is extraordinary. It's exactly what the world needs to hear. We're going to wrap up this session. We're going to come back and do a few more sessions. So everybody stand by, nationsinaction.org, and we will be right back with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.